Peace on earth, right? Let's just keep talking about it because I feel like we need it. Everybody survived Christmas, let's see. Good thing. It's better than the alternative. This is supposed to be the time of year where everybody's a little happier and jollier and more peaceful. And what I've been talking about is how a lot of times it's not. This is the most stressful, most conflict. Having to deal with Cousin Eddie, And you know who Cousin Eddie is, right? Like, everybody's got one. Everybody's got one. And if you're sitting there and you don't know who he is in your family, then you're him. It's you. And so, which is kind of cool because Cousin Eddie, he's just oblivious, man. The dude lives in no filter whatsoever. So that's kind of a better way to live anyway. But this time of year can be and turns out to be stressful, especially right now, because all the Christmas gifts are given, and now you're like, wow, that was a lot of money. And you're like, phew, it all adds up, doesn't it? I mean, if you got 10 people and you spend $10 each, you just spend $100, right? So it all adds up. And can you buy anything for $10? I mean, is there anything that can be bought? I mean, a what? Gift card, yeah. You can get one a gift card for Starbucks, and you can get a cup of coffee. $10. So, today I want to talk to you some more about how to have world peace, and what the whole idea behind this little series or talks we've been having is that. Honestly, I don't know what's going on in the world. And I mean, I'm informed about situations and circumstances in the world, but I have no firsthand knowledge. What my world is right here. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I'm not sure Europe exists. I mean, I've heard, but I don't have firsthand experience, and really what's going on in there, although I have compassion on people, it's not affecting how I get out of bed in the morning, right? And I know there's sickness and disease in Africa, and it's horrible, and it's terrible. But at the same time, that's not affecting my house, my life directly. I'm not saying that it's not a terrible thing, and that we as a world should care about those things. Peace in the Middle East isn't at the forefront of what's taking place in my house before breakfast. Right now, if I lived in Israel today, that would be an issue, right? Because no one likes to have a bomb on the dinner table. I wouldn't consider that peace, but I would call that my world. What I'm getting at is I want us to look at our world, and it's your world, it's my world, and we share that world because, well, you're here and I'm here, and so our worlds collide. And the way to have peace in our world, and the way to have world peace is, well, it starts with you. And this may be news for a lot of you guys, and I understand this. I live with a control freak. I live with a bunch of control freaks. We have a household of control freaks. I don't think anyone in our house is not a control freak, come to think of it. I've got a 6-year-old control freak. That's wild. But contrary to popular belief and what you may think about yourself, you cannot control your people around you. You don't have any control over that. Sorry about that, man. That's the way it is. You don't have any control. We don't have any control on what other people do, what other people don't do, what they do to us. You don't have any control over that. Isn't that freeing? extremely liberating to understand that you are not in control. Right? Everybody just breathe. Yeah. Aren't you, on some level, aren't you glad that you don't have to control everybody? Because let me tell you, some people are just disappointing. Because, I mean, some people, let's face it, some people just have no potential. So, I mean, that's life. So if you're trying to control someone who just can't do better, you know, that happens. My mom and dad felt that way for a lot of years. Then they realized, we can't control this, so we'll let him destroy his own self. That happens. What I want to talk about, though, is how we can affect us. It's time, don't you think that it's time that people, and not us, of course, but people around us, take responsibility for their own lives? Wouldn't that be great? And I mean, if they would, then we could, right? If your husband or wife would just take responsibility for their own life, if your kids would just take responsibility for their own lives, then I could just worry about me, right? The thing is, we have to take responsibility for ourselves. We are the only ones who can change us. I talked about this last week. God is not going to change you, okay? Well, that would be a dictatorship, and the kingdom of heaven is not a dictatorship, okay? He doesn't force you to do anything, which is, we think, wow, that's so awesome and that's so cool. Right up to the point where we destroy ourselves and we say, God, why didn't you stop us? Why didn't you stop us from destroying ourselves and hurting all the people in our lives? Well, the thing is, God's not going to change you, okay? But He will empower you to change yourself. He will equip you. He will walk with you. He will encourage you. He will lift you up, and He will love you while you go through the process of changing. Isn't that good? I mean, you have the power to change your own life. That to me is great. That means, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, God is for you. He's not against you. He's for you. Do you get that? That there is a God, first of all, and that He is an almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-seeing God, right? To which, through my circumstances this year, I've asked, well, if He is all-powerful, then where has He been? Anybody else? Come on. Yeah. Yeah, it makes you ask those questions, right? And here's the thing. I don't know. Aren't you glad you came? I don't know. And here's the deal. You don't know either. You don't know either. But through the whole process of getting kicked in the teeth for 12 months, anybody familiar? Yeah. Through the process, what I've come to understand is that God is not against me. And even when I'm down, He's with me. He loves me. I think about last year, about this time, Chris did a message about us being in His hands, and he was talking about how no matter what circumstance or situation we're in, whether it's good times or bad times, whether we're up or down, we're still in His hands. He still loves us. He never stops caring about us. Isn't that awesome? He loves us. Now, we wish that He would take other people's will to hurt us away. Not ours, but theirs. We don't want Him to take our will. We want to do what we want to do, but we want Him to take everybody else's. Then we'd have a perfect world. Talking about peace on earth, just give me what I want and let everybody else conform to that. That is peace on earth, right? For you. I found this out when I got married too. I discovered that even two people can't always get what they want. So I think it's a challenge to try to expect a billion, okay, let's bring it in, a million, a few thousand, a few hundred people, maybe 10 people, to get together and agree on everything and have world peace, right? That's difficult, right? But here's the thing, it's not that difficult if we learn to live like Jesus wanted us to live. It's not that difficult if we start to look at ourselves and ask the simple questions to us. Am I a peaceful man? Do I have peace? Because if I start to live in peace, then, and the only way I can have peace is to get out of your business. How about that? We were talking about Facebook this morning. The only way I can have peace is to get off Facebook. Because y'all's problems drive me crazy. You're uncontrollable. It's unbelievable. And so it causes this thing, this tension, this, opinions. Anybody got opinions? Anybody got opinions about other people? Absolutely. You know what that is? That's going to cause you conflict. That's going to steal your peace. Your opinions about everybody else is going to steal your peace. Your control of everyone around you is definitely going to steal your peace. Your judgment, your deciding, your decisions about how or what everybody else should be or shouldn't be doing is going to steal your peace. It is. So, if that is all true, then the one thing that would make peace would be to get out of everybody else's business. Right? Jesus said, don't today have enough trouble of its own? Why am I worried about tomorrow? Why am I worried about what's going to happen? And to that point, why am I so worried about how people are living, acting, talking, things they're doing, money they're spending? Well, because as long as I do that, I don't have to look at me. As long as I can look and pick out things in other people, I never have to deal with me. So today I want to talk about dealing with me. All right? Is that cool? Here's two things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about this week and next week. Who are you? And what are you doing? Okay? Because those are important questions. And I think the root, and I'm a roots person, I like to peel things back and see what the real problem is. And I think when we peel back to the roots, one of the biggest problems we have in our world today is identity. We don't have peace today because we have no idea who we are. You have no idea. You're just kind of bopping along and letting circumstance and letting people and letting friends and letting parents and letting enemies and letting everybody in your life tell you who you are. And you accept that or you reject that. And either way, it causes conflict. Because if you reject it, you're at conflict with them. And if you accept it, you're at conflict with yourself. I'm going to tell you to do something today that may be odd to you. And a lot of you may think, well, this is kind of counter to how church should be. But your biggest problem, and you're like, well, you don't even know me that well. Oh, I do. I know you because I know me and I know people. I've been around the block. Your biggest problem, all of you, all of us, you don't love yourself. You just can't accept yourself. You don't love yourself. And you say, well, I do. I have great self-esteem. I do love myself. Not enough. You are God's most treasured, most cherished creation. and if you really, really loved yourself, and I know a lot of you guys are thinking, well, a lot of people just love themselves too much. They're so self-centered, self-focused, self-absorbed. Well, that's not really loving yourself. That's lying to yourself. That's manipulating yourself. That's fear, and it's based in fear. You're scared of what people think. You're scared of everything in life. You're scared of living. You're scared of dying. You're scared of having fun. You're scared of not having fun. You're scared of relationships. You're scared of losing relationships. You're afraid of everything. So what do? You put up walls. You protect yourself. You become self-centered and self-focused, all because you don't love yourself. If you truly cherished yourself the way God cherishes you, you wouldn't be concerned with you, because that would be settled. And once that's settled, then you start to be able to live free and to be happy and to not live in conflict. You want to know where world peace starts? It starts with you loving yourself. Loving yourself the way God loves you. You are the greatest person you know. Do you know that? I mean, have you ever realized that you are the greatest person that you know? You are worthy. You are valuable. I was reading this morning in I don't remember where. Look, it's an open book test. I was reading in Kings. If you've ever read Kings and Samuel and all those books, they kind of Chronicles, they repeat, so it's hard to remember where you're at. I was in Kings, and here's what I was reading. I was reading about David, King David. He was old, and you get this idea of how old he was because, he didn't really know what was going on around him. He was real old, and so his older son decides, well, Dad's lost it. He's gone. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make myself king. And so he decides, hey, I'm going to be king. So to be king, you have to be anointed by a priest and a prophet and baptism. You have to be baptized in a water, and then you are anointed as king, right? And so his son decides, he gets these guys to go in with him, and they decide, well, hey, I'm going to be king. So he gathers up a group of friends, and they go to make himself king. And they don't tell the prophet Samuel, and they don't tell Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, because she knew David had already said that Solomon was to be king in his place, that he was to be established. And so they go to David, and they go, it's wild that you let your other son become king. And he's like, what are you talking about? Bathsheba's in his quarters. And you can read all this. This is in 1 Kings chapter 2. It's a really good story. But what happens is David says, no, that's not the way it's supposed to be. So he calls a priest and he calls a prophet, and they take, he gives Solomon his royal donkey. I don't know I guess that's a royal thing. So he puts him on his donkey. They go down to the river. They're anointing Solomon as king. And he makes him king. And there's all this trouble that goes with it. And his brother comes back. And now, here's the thing. When you're king, you're like a big deal, right? I mean, the king actually, anyone who caused conflict in the king, he killed them. He had the power to get rid of conflict. There's a couple of ways to have peace in your life. One of them is to just kill everybody who causes conflict, which that's not a better way to live, by the way. I mean, I'm not saying that's a better way to live. I'm just saying that's a way. Okay. And then you'll get some solitary time to spend and, think about what you did. But here's what I wanted to get to. This just jumped out at me, and I think when things jump out at me, God wants me to share with you. So here's what jumped out at me as David's other son comes before Solomon. he comes actually to Solomon's mom because he's scared Solomon was going to kill him. So she comes and he's asking for David to give him a wife. And David refuses, and he's not going to because he knows that this is just a ploy to steal his kingdom away. But here's what Solomon answered when this request was made. And this is in 1 Kings 2, 24. It says, "The Lord has confirmed me and placed me on the throne of my father David. He has established my dynasty as he promised." Solomon understood exactly who he was. He understood his identity. He understood why and what power he had. He understood where his power and authority had come from. And he was confident in the decisions that he made because of his identity. He was secure in his identity. Now, being a king, that ought to make you very secure, right, in your identity. Like, you can understand a king who has everything. Solomon was one of the richest men that ever lived. He had everything. He had fancy clothes. He had fancy cars. He had fancy houses. He had fancy wives, which is ignorant. No. He had everything that the world could offer, and God grants him a favor, or grants him his request, and his request was for wisdom, so Solomon became the wisest man that ever lived. And I was thinking about this from a perspective of, well, yeah, he's king. He commands. He knows who he is. He has identity. He has self-confidence. He makes decisions, and no one questions his decisions. He has peace because of his power, right? And his power comes from his confidence in who he is. He is a king. Well, why was Solomon a king? Because his father made him king, right? His father was King David, who God told that would have a descendant on the throne forever, which is a good thing. So Solomon is the son of the king, and he has been given what the king has. And he has peace and confidence and wisdom and everything that the world can offer. But when he talks and when he speaks, you just see the authority and the power and the self-confidence, right? And here's what I was thinking. Here's what was really impressed on me as I was reading the story about Solomon and his identity. Is his identity as king came from his father. But why don't we see ourselves as sons of the king? Would you say that Solomon was one of the most valuable people? Wouldn't he be a man to be envied in ancient Israel? Because his father was king, and because his father had granted him his kingship? And we look at Solomon and we say, well, yeah, it makes sense. No wonder he's so confident. His father just made him king. His father, who was king, gave him his kingship. But the truth is, God made his father king. God made Solomon king. God made Jesus king and Lord. And Jesus invited you to be a joint heir. through Jesus, we're children of the King, aren't we? And if we look at Solomon and we look at who he was and his identity, and we say, well, yeah, Solomon could be confident because he's the son of the king, then wouldn't I have to look in the mirror and say, you're son of the king? And all that the king has, he has given to you. Jesus came and he said, I'm the light of the world. But then later, after he walks with people for a while, he does something wild and he says, you are the light of the world. He commissioned his followers the same way the king commissioned his son to carry out his kingdom. Our identity, guys, is that we are children of the Most High God. You are sons and daughters of the Almighty. You are His special child. Now, when your dad calls you special, that's not what he's talking about. Okay. That's not what he's saying. I have special child. No. But you are dear to your Father's heart. You are His most valued treasure. He is King. And He has commissioned you to represent Him, to be His vessel in this world. And if you'll get that, and if you'll get how much you are loved by your Father, and if you'll get that everything that is God's is yours, then you don't have to worry about what everybody else is doing. Don't things of the world kind of just fall beneath? James, this writer of the New Testament, he says, why do we quarrel and fight? Why do we argue? Why is there conflict? And he goes on, he says, it's because you don't have what you want. So you kill and you steal and you lie and you try to do everything you can to get it. But see, the thing is, all the things in this world aren't gonna make who you are. Your things don't determine your identity. Do you understand? Your reputation, your power, those are all things that are created in your own mind. Okay? Your stuff, your success, all of the things of the world, it's not who you are. You can't get away from one fact. You're a child of the King. You are a joint heir. You know what that means? Joint heir. That means you are connected with the inheritance from the Father. Jesus, would we say Jesus was a king? Anybody? Yeah. Well, if I'm a joint heir with Jesus, what does that make me? Royalty. We say, well, Jesus, no, don't say I'm like Jesus. Well, I didn't say it. The Bible said it. Okay? I didn't say it. We've got to start to understand that we have a role. We have an identity in this world. And it's to be a child of the Most High God. And the thing is, no one can take that from you, but it can be given away. You can surrender that. You cannot Solomon did not have to be identified with his position, did he? He could have let his brother become king. His brother then would have had him killed, had his mother killed. It could have went a whole different way. But Solomon walked in his identity. He was and acted out his role of who he really was. And our problem is I don't think any of us live out who we really are. If we did, we wouldn't be judging. Jesus said that's not a better way to live. Well, he knew something. He was confident in who he was. We wouldn't be talking about people. We wouldn't be fighting and quarreling over stuff. We wouldn't have aspirations for more. We would start to be settled in who we are. We would start to love ourselves because God's love is in us and He loves us. And once we start to love ourselves, we'll start to care more about the world around us because I don't really need anything. I don't need to be thought well of. I don't need my self-esteem boosted because, frankly, how can you boost it anymore? My Father's king. Where do you go from there? What can you give me that I don't already have? What could you take away from me? We have to think different. Man, if we could even get a small grasp on it, we could live so much different. Solomon, I was told you last week, I was reading Ecclesiastes, and I encourage you to do that, but he was writing, and he's like, wealth comes and wealth goes, and it really doesn't matter. It's all going to be here, and good things happen to bad people, and bad things happen to good people. It's the way it is. And just because you follow God with all of your life don't mean you're going to have an easy time, and he adds a phrase, in this life. But when we see things for what they are, we start to realize that I can live in total peace and total joy because of who I am. And I can ride the waves of this world. Last year was terrible. Next year, good. Next year, terrible. Next year, good. Next year, terrible. Next year, good. Now, if my identity's found in that, man, I'm on the roller coaster, right? It's terrible. It's a terrible way to live. There's no peace in that. But once I understand that I'm king of the world, and guys, I'm saying that kind of joking, kind of. The truth is, why don't you live like you're king of the world? Are you not? Are you God on earth? And who do you believe him to be? Why don't we walk around like we're kings of the world? What would a king look like? What would a king act like? What would a king say? What would a king do? That's my question when we meet again. When we meet again, we're going to talk about who am I and what am I doing? Because next year is important. Tomorrow's important. Because who I am needs to bust out. You have input into where you're going next year. You have input into what's going on with you next year. You can do things. You can change things. You can become things. You're not stuck. And you know how I know you're not stuck where you are? Because you're a child of the King. And the King isn't stuck, is he? If I really thought I was king, I wouldn't look at my life as if I'm stuck. I wouldn't look at my life as if there's no hope. I have hope. I have faith. I have assurance. I know who I am, and I know what I'm doing, and I can do anything because I'm a child of the King. You can do anything. You can have whatever kind of life you choose. Do you know that? Do you believe that? Me and Celia were talking last night. This is America, isn't it? I can live anywhere I want to. It's America, right? I don't have to ask anybody. I can pick up, sell my house, and I can move. America. I can change jobs. I can change careers. Oh, Todd, this is a terrible time to be changing careers. Well, go ahead and wait till you're 70. It's a better time then. Why not? Look, if you don't like what's going on in your life, change it. But if you don't settle your identity, it doesn't matter where you go or what you do. Do you understand that? Because all you're going to be is you somewhere else, doing something different. You're going to get a whole new group of people telling you who you are and who you should be and what you should look like, what you should say and what you should do. You're a child of the King. And if I could get anything through to you today, you have to learn to love yourself. You have to learn that you have worth. You have value. I don't care what you did. I don't care where you've come from. I don't care what you've done for the last 40 years. I don't care. It doesn't matter because that's not who you are. You're king of the world. You're king of the world. You are the greatest person you know. And when you settle that and when you become okay with that, you're going to love your wife a lot more. Because you'll have security in who you are. You'll love your kids a lot more because you'll have security in who you are. You'll love your parents, your friends a lot more. You know what? It's easy breezy to forgive if you love yourself. But you will not be able to forgive if you don't love yourself. Can't do it. It's impossible. It's impossible to not judge everyone in your life because you love yourself. If you love yourself, there's no need to judge because you're totally comfortable. And the only reason I would judge in the first place is so I'd find out where I stack up against you. But I don't need to know that because I'm king of the world. I don't need to know how I stack up. I'm a child of the Most High God. I know exactly where I stack up. Confidence is not made up. It's real. It comes from knowing who you are. Fear comes from an identity crisis. You need to figure this out. You need to figure out how to love yourself. You need to figure out your worth and your value. Who has told you that you're worthless? Who has told you that you're worth nothing? Who has destroyed your value? Who has rejected you and hurt you? Someone who needed to lift themselves up by pushing everybody else down. That's who. Someone who don't know who they are, so they try to tell you who you are, that you're less than them. Maybe you've told people they're worthless. Maybe you're the one who's told people they didn't have any value, that they would never amount to anything. But the only reason you would do that is because you just don't know who you are. See, once I know who I am, all that stuff just goes away. Once I'm comfortable in being king of the world, I know it's hard to get used to, titles and stuff, you know. Once you get used to it, and probably there's been a million people in your life that says if you love yourself, you're self-centered and selfish. Well, that's because they don't know who they are. It's because they don't love themselves. So they're not going to allow you to love yourself. Self-centeredness is a sign that you don't love yourself. That you're not comfortable in your own skin. You don't know who you are, what you're doing. Does that make sense? So you need to get real with yourself. You need to understand that you are worth everything. You have value. This writer, Paul, he's sitting in a prison cell, and he's writing a letter to a church in Philippians and in Philippi, and in that letter, it's a letter of joy and encouragement. The book of Philippians is a letter, and in that book he says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me my strength. He's confident in who he is. He also says in that, and this guy, I mean, you're talking about a first century dungeon, prison, cold, fish heads to eat, not good. And he's writing, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. Have joy. The whole theme of the book is about joy. It's about peace. It's about having life and strength and knowing who he is. How does he do that? How could he be that way? He's been beaten. He's been shipwrecked. And the worst thing that ever happened to Paul, he got bit by a snake. I mean, that's terrible, horrible. And the whole time, he actually knows who he is. I'm a child of the Most High God. I am loved. That my God came and gave himself up for me. That's how valuable I am to him. He cares about me. He loves me. He has given me identity. And all the things in the world seem to elude Paul. All of the possessions and treasures and power and reputation and everything in the world just seems to elude him. And the whole time, it means nothing. It means nothing. You know what? You could lose your house. There's some of you guys that are right there at that point. You could lose your house. You could lose your cars. You could lose your financial status. You could. But it doesn't change anything. Unless that's how you identify yourself. You don't have to live that way. That's a lot of pressure to live under. You can't have peace in that. How can you, man? Our economy's crazy. Anybody ever watch the news? It's sick crazy. I mean, one day everything's over. We're all going to die. We're all going to hell. It's terrible. The next day, we're just right on the brink of turning it all around. The next day, everything's bad. Next day, everything's going to be good. Everything's bad. And then, man, I can't live that way. Can't be attached to this world. I don't feel like y'all are understanding me. And I'm just going to have to quit and leave it with you, okay? Because this is something you're going to have to receive. You're going to have God show you how much he loves you, how much he cares about you. He's going to have to show you your sonship, your daughtership. He's going to have to show you. And once you get it, you'll forget it. Trust me, there are going to be times where you're going to get right in the middle of this world and you're going to be judgmental and mean and unforgiving and unloving. You're going to be that way. We all are. And then one day you wake up and you remember, oh, wait, man, I don't have peace anymore. Oh, yeah, I forgot who I was. I'm the king of the world. I've been telling my wife that for years. I'm the king of the world. She just don't believe me. My daughters come and they think they're king of the world. That's okay. I'm son of the Most High God. I'm son of the King. And everything that's his is mine. I'm a joint heir. I'm left here as king of the world. Jesus was Prince of Peace, and Jesus now manifests through us. We're princes, and princesses of peace, right? Are we or not? And the truth is, until you settle that, you're never going to have peace. There will not be peace in the world as long as you don't understand who you are. Be encouraged. I mean that with all my heart. Leave here today on top of the world. I don't care what your circumstance is. Circumstances come and go. Anybody ever been up? Circumstances up? Good times? Nobody? Few? 2 people? My gosh. There's been good times, hasn't there? Anybody ever had bad times? Yeah, there's bad times. Anybody ever have more good times? Yeah, there's more good times. Do you see what I'm getting at? Circumstances always change. They're always going to change. But that's not who you are. It never has to be who you are again. Do you understand that? Allow yourself to love yourself. Okay, you'll never hear that from a shrink. I don't know, maybe you will. Who knows? I don't go to shrinks. I'm shrunk enough. I shrink myself all the time. Allow yourself to love yourself. Guys, your capacity to love those around you is ceilinged out, is maxed out on how much you love yourself. You can never love anybody if you don't love yourself. You love your neighbor as you love yourself. If you don't love yourself, it is impossible to love your neighbor. Do you understand that? It's impossible. Love yourself. You understand? All right, everybody stand up with me.